Who's the lucky man tonight? Ethan Carter asked with a crooked smile, expecting nothing more than a laugh. The CEO standing beside him looked directly into his eyes and answered, "Was hoping that would be you." Ethan's smile disappeared. For 3 seconds, neither of them spoke. Around them, crystal glasses clinked, soft jazz drifted through the rooftop ballroom, and downtown Chicago glittered 20 floors below. Ethan had come to the charity gala because his 8-year-old daughter, Lily, had been invited to perform with a children's choir. He wore his only dark suit, carefully pressed that afternoon, though the cuffs were beginning to show the wear of too many long days at his auto repair shop. Claire Whitmore, on the other hand, belonged everywhere in that room. At 36, she was the CEO of Whitmore Technologies, a company known across the country, and nearly everyone there seemed to know her name. Yet Ethan had only known her for 7 minutes. 7 minutes ago, she had been standing alone near the balcony, looking less like a powerful executive and more like someone who needed a quiet place to breathe. Ethan had noticed because he knew that look. It was the look of someone surrounded by people and still feeling alone. "You okay?" he had asked. Claire turned, surprised. "I'm fine. That's usually what people say when they're not." She almost laughed. Almost. Then Ethan had glanced toward the crowded ballroom and added, "So, who's the lucky man tonight?" He meant it as a harmless joke. He had no idea his words would change the entire evening. Claire looked at him now, her expression softer than before. "Was hoping that would be you." Ethan cleared his throat. "Me? You?" She said it simply, without embarrassment or games. Ethan looked toward the ballroom, then back at her. "You know I'm just the guy who fixes cars, right?" Claire smiled. "I know. And you're the CEO." "Unfortunately." He laughed. It was the first genuine laugh Claire had heard all night. She had spent years surrounded by executives, investors, celebrities, and men who knew exactly how much her company was worth. Most of them wanted something. A contract, an introduction, a favor, a place beside her. Ethan had asked a silly question and seemed genuinely confused that she had answered honestly. "You really weren't joking?" he asked. Claire shook her head. Not even a little. Across the room, Lily appeared at the ballroom entrance, clutching her small program and searching for her father. Ethan's face changed instantly. The guarded man who had been standing beside a CO suddenly became a father again. Claire noticed. She watched him kneel, smile, and open his arms as Lily ran toward him. No cameras, no applause, no business deal, just a father and his daughter. Claire felt something inside her grow unexpectedly quiet. Maybe the lucky man wasn't the one everyone in that room wanted to become. Maybe, for the first time in years, she had found the one person who had no idea he was exactly what she had been hoping to find. Claire watched Ethan kneel beside Lily, listening carefully as the little girl whispered something into his ear. His expression softened, and he smiled in a way Claire had not seen all evening. It was not the polished smile of a man at a business event. It was the quiet smile of a father who had learned that the smallest moments could matter more than anything money could buy. "Your daughter?" Claire asked as Ethan stood. "Yes, Lily." Lily looked up at Claire with the fearless curiosity only a child seemed to possess. "Are you Dad's friend?" Ethan glanced at Claire, suddenly looking more nervous than he had when he first joked with her. Claire smiled. "I hope I am." Lily considered that answer carefully. "Then you should come meet my friends." Ethan laughed softly. She does not usually invite strangers into her world that quickly. Claire looked at him. Maybe she has good instincts. Lily took Claire's hand without hesitation and led her toward the ballroom. Ethan followed, shaking his head with an amused smile. The children's choir was gathering near the small stage, and Lily introduced Claire to 3 of her classmates, as though she were introducing an ordinary neighbor. Claire listened, smiled, and asked questions. No one mentioned stock prices. No one mentioned quarterly earnings. No one cared that her company employed thousands of people. For 10 quiet minutes, Claire was simply Claire. Ethan noticed the change in her face. "You look different," he said. She raised an eyebrow. "Different how?" "Relaxed." She looked toward Lily and the other children. "I forgot what that felt like." Ethan did not offer advice. He simply nodded. He understood that some feelings did not need to be fixed. They only needed room to exist. When the choir began rehearsing, Ethan and Claire stepped toward the back of the room. Lily's voice rose above the others, bright and clear. Claire watched her, then glanced at Ethan. "You must be proud. Every day, You raised her alone? Claire asked gently. Ethan paused. Mostly. Life changed, and I stayed. There was no bitterness in his voice. No attempt to make himself a hero. Just a simple truth. Claire lowered her eyes for a moment. That says a lot about you. Ethan shrugged. She needed a dad. I needed a reason to keep going. The word stayed with Claire. She had heard powerful people speak about sacrifice, loyalty, and family at hundreds of conferences. Yet somehow, those 5 simple words meant more than any speech she could remember. A waiter passed with sparkling water and small plates of food. Claire reached for a glass, but Ethan noticed she had barely eaten. Have you had dinner? He asked. She smiled. I have been busy. That was not my question. She laughed. No. Ethan picked up a plate and handed it to her. Then start there. Claire accepted it. For once, nobody was ordering her to slow down. Nobody was telling her what was best for the company. A single dad with grease under his fingernails was simply reminding her to eat. And somehow, that ordinary kindness felt more valuable than anything waiting for her in the ballroom. Claire looked at Ethan and realized something she did not yet have words for. She was no longer curious about him because he was different. She was curious because, around him, she felt like she did not have to be anyone else. The next morning, Claire Whitmore woke before sunrise and realized she was thinking about a man whose last name she had known for less than one night. That should have bothered her. Instead, it made her smile. She had spent years measuring her days in meetings, flights, investor calls, and decisions that affected thousands of people. Yet the moment that stayed with her was Ethan Carter handing her a plate of food and saying, "Then start there." It was such a small thing. Somehow it mattered. By noon, Claire had already turned down 2 invitations and postponed a business lunch. She told herself she was simply tired. She knew better. Across town, Ethan was standing beneath the hood of an older Ford pickup at his small auto repair shop, trying to diagnose a stubborn engine problem while Lily sat at the front desk doing her homework. "Dad?" she called. "You are smiling." Ethan looked up. "Am I?" "Yes." She lowered her pencil. "You only smile like that when you are thinking about someone." Ethan laughed. "You are 8. You should be thinking about your homework." "I am thinking about my homework. I am also thinking about the lady from last night." Ethan shook his head. "Her name is Claire." Lily smiled. "I know." Before Ethan could answer, his phone vibrated on the workbench. A message from Claire appeared. She had written only one sentence. "Do you always make people eat dinner?" Ethan stared at the screen for a moment before typing back. "Only people who forget." Her reply came almost immediately. "Then I suppose I owe you dinner." Ethan smiled. He could have suggested a nice restaurant. He could have asked what kind of place a CEO preferred. Instead, he wrote, "There is a little diner near the lake. Best pancakes in town." Claire answered, "Tonight?" Ethan hesitated. He looked toward Lily, who was pretending not to watch him. "Tonight," he typed. That evening, Claire arrived at the diner in a simple navy coat, without an assistant, without a driver, and without the polished presence she carried into boardrooms. Ethan was already waiting in a booth beside the window. When she sat down, she looked around and smiled. "You really brought me here? You said you owed me dinner." "I did. This place is honest." Claire laughed. "What does that mean?" Ethan looked at the menu. "Nobody cares who you are here. They care whether the coffee is hot." Claire laughed again, and this time she did not try to hide it. Their conversation moved easily from Lily to childhood memories, from favorite foods to the small dreams they had once abandoned. Ethan told her he had always wanted to restore old cars. Claire admitted that before becoming a CEO, she had wanted to open a small bookstore. "What happened?" Ethan asked. She looked out the window at the lights reflecting on the lake. "Life got louder." Ethan nodded. "Sometimes quiet is harder to find than money." Claire looked back at him. For the first time that evening, she did not see the mechanic, the single father, or the man from the charity gala. She saw Ethan, a man who had built a life from what remained and still found reasons to be kind. And Ethan, sitting across from her, began to wonder whether Claire was not the distant, untouchable woman everyone believed her to be. Maybe she was simply someone who had been waiting a long time for a place where she could finally breathe. By the following Saturday, something had changed between Ethan and Claire. Neither of them had named it, but both could feel it. Claire began finding reasons to stop by the auto repair shop after work, sometimes carrying coffee, sometimes bringing Lily a small book she thought she would enjoy. Ethan never asked why she came. He simply made room for her. That afternoon, Claire stepped through the garage door and found Ethan helping an elderly customer understand a repair estimate. The man looked worried. Ethan pointed patiently to each line on the paper. "You do not have to fix everything today," he said. "We can take care of what matters most first." The customer nodded with relief. Claire stood quietly near the doorway, watching. She had heard Ethan speak about kindness, but now she saw it in practice. He could have charged more. He could have rushed the conversation. Instead, he treated a stranger with the same respect he had given her. When the customer finally left, Claire approached the workbench. "You do that with everyone?" Ethan wiped his hands with a clean cloth. "Do what? Make people feel like they are not a problem." Ethan gave her a puzzled look. "They are people, Claire." She smiled faintly. "Most people in my world forget that." Ethan studied her face. "Your world sounds exhausting." "Sometimes it is." She looked around the garage. The shelves were lined with tools. A small refrigerator hummed in the corner. Lily's drawings covered part of the wall beside a faded calendar. There was nothing impressive about the place by the standards Claire was used to. Yet it felt warm, real, safe. She noticed a framed photograph of Ethan and Lily beside the desk. "You built all this?" she asked. "Not exactly. Life built most of it. I just kept showing up." Claire looked at him for a long moment. "That may be the most impressive thing I have heard all week." Ethan smiled. "You spend too much time around executives." She laughed. Then Lily appeared from the office carrying a notebook. "Claire, Dad says you know how to run a company." Claire crouched slightly so they were at eye level. "I try." Lily opened her notebook. "Then can you help me with this?" It was a page filled with ideas for a school fundraiser. Claire sat beside her without hesitation. Ethan watched them from across the garage. The scene was ordinary, almost painfully ordinary. A little girl asking questions. A woman with billions of dollars listening to a child explain a bake sale. A father standing nearby, realizing his life had begun to include someone he never expected. But the quiet moment did not last. Claire's phone began ringing. She glanced at the screen, and the warmth in her expression disappeared. She answered reluctantly. "Claire, we need you downtown immediately." Her shoulders stiffened. Ethan watched her become the CEO again. The woman who had laughed over pancakes was suddenly surrounded by deadlines, investors, and decisions. She ended the call and looked at him. "I have to go." Ethan nodded. "Of course." She hesitated at the door. "I will come back." Ethan smiled. "I know." Claire stepped outside, but before she reached her car, she stopped and looked back through the garage window. Ethan was helping Lily gather her papers. For a moment, Claire wondered what it would feel like to belong somewhere that did not care about her title. Then she looked at the phone in her hand and realized the answer might cost her more than she was ready to admit. The next 3 days passed differently. Claire did not return to the garage, and Ethan told himself not to think about it. He failed. Every time the shop door opened, he looked up. Every time his phone vibrated, he hoped it was her. Then, on Wednesday afternoon, a black sedan stopped outside the garage. Claire stepped out wearing a tailored gray suit, and Ethan immediately knew something was wrong. She walked inside slowly. "We need to talk." Ethan set down his wrench. "That sounds serious." "It is." Claire looked around the familiar garage, almost as if she were saying goodbye to it. "There is something I should have told you." Ethan waited. "I am the chief executive officer of Whitmore Technologies." Silence settled between them. Ethan looked at her, then at the expensive watch on her wrist, then back at her face. "You are the Claire Whitmore?" She nodded. "The one from the news?" Another nod. Ethan let out a quiet breath. "Why did you not tell me?" Claire looked down. "Because I wanted one evening where nobody knew." Ethan's voice remained calm. "And you decided I did not deserve to know?" "That is not what I meant." "Then what did you mean?" Claire took a step closer. "I meant that when I was with you, I was not a CEO. I was not an investor. I was not someone's business opportunity. I was just Claire." Ethan looked away. He understood that. Maybe that was what made it harder. "You could have told me," he said. "I know." She folded her hands. "I was afraid you would see me differently." Ethan gave a small, sad smile. "You were right." Claire's eyes lifted. "What do you mean?" "I do see you differently now." Her expression fell. Ethan continued, "But not because you are rich. Because you kept something important from me." Claire stood quietly. The garage seemed smaller than before. The hum of the refrigerator filled the silence. "I never wanted to hurt you," she said. "I know." "Then what do you want?" Ethan looked toward the framed photograph of Lily. I want honesty. My daughter and I have had enough changes in our lives. I cannot bring someone into her world if I do not know whether I can trust them. Claire nodded slowly. That is fair. She turned toward the door. Ethan expected her to leave angry. Instead, she stopped. For what it is worth, Ethan, nothing about those nights was fake. He looked at her. I believe you. Claire gave him a small smile. Good. Then she walked outside. Ethan watched the sedan disappear down the street. He wanted to follow her. He wanted to call her back. But he stayed where he was. Because dignity sometimes meant letting someone leave without chasing them. Across town, Claire entered the quiet elevator of Whitmore Technologies and stared at her reflection in the mirrored wall. She had negotiated billion-dollar deals without hesitation. She had faced shareholders, competitors, and impossible deadlines. Yet one quiet mechanic had asked her for something money could never purchase. The truth. And for the first time, Claire realized that if she wanted Ethan in her life, she could not ask him to trust a version of her that did not exist. She would have to let him see all of her, even the parts that frightened her most. The following Friday, Ethan was closing the garage when he noticed a familiar black sedan parked across the street. Claire did not get out immediately. She sat behind the wheel for nearly a minute, gathering the courage to walk into a place where nobody cared about her title. When she finally entered, Ethan looked up from the cash register. You came back. Claire nodded. I said I would. Ethan studied her carefully. You did. She placed a small paper bag on the counter. I brought dinner. Ethan glanced inside. Pancakes. Not exactly. I remembered you said Lily likes grilled cheese. A quiet smile crossed his face. She does. Claire looked toward the office. Is she here? Doing homework. Claire nodded. Can I see her? Ethan hesitated for only a moment. Sure. Lily appeared with a pencil in one hand and a notebook under her arm. When she saw Claire, her face brightened. You came back. Claire smiled. I did. Lily looked at her father, then at the paper bag. Did you bring food? Ethan laughed. Apparently, she is learning fast. The three of them sat at the small table in the office. It was nothing like the restaurants Claire usually visited. There were no white tablecloths, no polished silverware, and no people waiting to hear what she wanted next. There was only grilled cheese, tomato soup, and the soft sound of Lily explaining her school project. Claire listened as though the project were the most important thing in the world. Ethan watched her quietly. She was different now, not because she had changed who she was, but because she had stopped hiding behind who everyone expected her to be. After dinner, Claire asked Ethan if he would attend an event with her the following week. Ethan looked uncertain. What kind of event? A company reception. Claire. I know. She held his gaze. I am not asking you to pretend to belong there. I am asking you to come as yourself. Ethan was silent. Claire continued. There will be people who judge you. There will be people who judge me. But I do not want to keep separating the different parts of my life. Ethan looked down at his hands. You know what people will say. Yes. They will say I am with you because of your money. Claire shook her head. Then let them talk. Ethan looked at her again. And what will you say? Claire answered without hesitation. That you are the man who remembered to ask whether I had eaten. Ethan smiled despite himself. That is not exactly a glowing biography. It is to me. The words settled between them. Later that evening, after Claire left, Ethan stood alone in the garage. He thought about how easily she could have stayed in her world and forgotten him. Instead, she had returned. Not with promises. Not with money. With grilled cheese and honesty. Across town, Claire entered the executive floor of Whitmore Technologies. Her assistant reminded her about the upcoming reception, the investors who would attend, and the importance of maintaining a certain image. Claire listened quietly. Then she said, add one guest to my invitation list. Her assistant asked, who? Claire looked through the glass wall toward the city lights. Ethan Carter. The assistant paused. The mechanic? Claire smiled. No, the man I want beside me. And for the first time, Claire understood that choosing someone was easy in private. The real test would come when the whole world was watching. The evening of the company reception arrived with a cold November wind moving through downtown Chicago, and Ethan almost turned around before he reached the entrance. He stood outside the hotel in the same dark suit he had worn to the charity gala, checking his reflection in the glass doors. It was clean. It was pressed. It was still the only formal suit he owned. His phone buzzed. Claire had sent one message. Do not leave. Ethan smiled despite himself and walked inside. The reception was everything he had expected. Crystal lights hung above a crowded ballroom. Men in tailored suits spoke quietly about investments and acquisitions. Women in elegant dresses moved between tables, while servers carried sparkling water and small plates. Ethan felt every difference between this room and his garage. Then Claire appeared at the top of the stairs. She was wearing a simple black dress and carrying herself with the confidence of someone accustomed to being watched. But the moment she saw Ethan, her expression softened. She walked directly toward him. "You came." Ethan smiled. "You asked." Claire reached him and quietly said, "Thank you." Before Ethan could answer, several people approached. One was a senior investor named Richard Hale, a man who had known Claire for years. He looked at Ethan, then at Claire. "I did not realize you were bringing a guest." Claire answered calmly, "I am." Richard smiled politely, but his eyes remained skeptical. "And what does he do?" Ethan opened his mouth, but Claire answered first. "He owns an auto repair shop." The conversation stopped for half a second. Ethan noticed the change immediately. A few nearby guests looked over. Someone whispered. Another person smiled in a way that did not feel welcoming. Ethan lowered his eyes. Claire noticed. "His name is Ethan Carter," she said firmly. "He is also a single father, and one of the most dependable people I know." Richard gave a small laugh. "I am sure." Ethan looked at him. "You do not have to convince anyone." Claire turned toward Ethan. "I am not trying to convince them." Then she took his hand. "I am telling them." The room grew quieter. Ethan felt the attention of dozens of people, but Claire did not let go. Richard cleared his throat. "Claire, perhaps we should discuss this privately." She shook her head. "No. If people are going to make assumptions about him, they can hear the truth from me." Ethan gently squeezed her hand. "Claire, you do not have to defend me." She looked at him. "I know." Her voice softened. "I am choosing to." For a moment, Ethan forgot about the room. He forgot about the investors, the whispers, and the distance between their lives. Then a voice came from behind them. "You really brought the mechanic?" Ethan turned. The words were casual, almost dismissive. Claire's expression changed. She looked across the room and then back at Ethan. "Yes," she said, "because he is the person I wanted here." Silence followed. No one laughed. No one added another comment. Ethan looked at Claire, and something inside him shifted. He had spent years believing that love meant finding a place where he could fit. Claire was showing him something different. Maybe love was finding someone willing to make room for you exactly as you were. Yet as the evening continued, Ethan noticed the pressure beginning to build around Claire. Investors kept pulling her aside. Questions about the company became questions about her personal life. Ethan understood then that his presence was not merely uncomfortable for the people in the room. It was becoming a problem Claire would have to face when the doors closed and the cameras were gone. And Ethan knew what he had to do. Before midnight, he would make a decision that could change everything. Ethan left the reception before midnight, but Claire followed him into the quiet hotel corridor. "You are leaving." Ethan stopped. "I think I should." Claire looked at him, trying to understand. "Why?" Ethan took a slow breath. "Because every person in that room was watching you. Let them watch." "It is not that simple." Claire stepped closer. "It is for me." Ethan shook his head. "No, Claire. It is not. You have a company to run. You have investors. You have people who expect you to protect what you built. And what do you think I am protecting?" Ethan did not answer. Claire continued, "You?" He looked away. "I do not want to become another problem in your life." Her expression softened. "You are not a problem." "Then what am I?" Claire was silent for a moment. "Someone I do not want to lose." Those words stayed between them. Ethan looked back at her. "You barely know me." "I know enough." She spoke quietly now. "I know you stayed beside your daughter when life became difficult. I know you help people who cannot always pay. I know you never once asked what I could do for you. And I know that when everyone else in that room was trying to impress me, you were worried about whether I had eaten." Ethan smiled faintly. "That still sounds like a strange reason to choose someone." Claire shook her head. "It is not the reason. It is the proof." Ethan lowered his eyes. The hotel corridor was almost empty. The distant sound of music drifted through the closed ballroom doors. Claire reached into her coat pocket and pulled out her car keys. "Come with me." Ethan looked surprised. "Where?" "Anywhere quiet." They drove through downtown Chicago without speaking much. The city lights moved across the windshield, gold and white against the dark streets. Eventually, Claire stopped near the lake. They stepped out and stood beside the railing, listening to the water move softly below. I am scared, Claire admitted. Ethan turned toward her. Of what? Of having something real to lose. Ethan understood. He had been afraid of the same thing. Claire looked at him. I have spent years building a life where I control everything. My company, my schedule, my reputation. Then you walked into my life and made me realize that none of that tells me whether I am happy. Ethan looked toward the water. I am not sure I know how to do this either. Do what? Let someone in. Claire smiled. Then maybe we can learn. Ethan looked at her, and for a long moment, neither of them spoke. There was no audience now. No investors. No cameras. No difference in wealth or status. Just two people standing beside a quiet lake, trying to decide whether trust was worth the risk. Finally, Ethan said, I cannot promise you an easy life. Claire smiled. Good. I do not want an easy life. I cannot give you expensive dinners every night. I can survive. Ethan laughed. And I have a daughter who comes first. Claire's eyes softened. I would never ask you to change that. Ethan nodded slowly. Then Claire took his hand. This time, he did not pull away. But the next morning, Ethan would discover that the reception had consequences far beyond awkward conversations. A photograph of Claire standing beside him had already reached the people who wanted to control her company, and they had decided that Ethan Carter was no longer just the man Claire had chosen to bring into a room. He was the weakness they believed they could use against her. By sunrise, the photograph had become the one thing Ethan wished he had never seen. Claire's image stood beside his in headlines across Chicago, followed by questions about her judgment, her company, and the mysterious single father who had appeared at her side. Ethan stared at the screen in his kitchen while Lily ate cereal beside him. Dad, are you okay? Ethan turned off the phone. I am fine, sweetheart. But he knew the truth. He was not fine. Claire called 10 minutes later. Ethan, please do not read anything online. Too late. She sighed. They are trying to make this look like a weakness. And are they succeeding? Claire was silent. That answer told him enough. Ethan looked toward Lily, then back at the phone. What do you need me to do? Nothing. Claire, I mean it. You do not need to fix this. Ethan smiled faintly. I am not trying to fix your company. I am trying to make sure you are not facing it alone. On the other end, Claire said nothing for several seconds. Then she whispered, Thank you. The next few days were difficult. Claire spent long hours at Whitmore Technologies, meeting with advisors and investors who wanted her to distance herself from Ethan. Some suggested she end the relationship quietly. Others told her that a successful chief executive officer could not afford a personal story that created uncertainty. Claire listened to every argument. Then she asked one question. Are you asking me to protect the company or to protect your opinion of me? The room went silent. Meanwhile, Ethan returned to the garage and tried to keep life normal. He fixed brakes. He changed tires. He helped Lily with her school project. He made dinner. He answered Claire's messages when he could. He did not ask her for money. He did not ask for favors. He did not ask her to solve anything. One evening, Claire arrived at the garage after sunset. She looked exhausted, but there was something different in her expression. Ethan set down his tools. How bad is it? Claire smiled. Better than yesterday. What changed? She walked toward him. I stopped trying to make everyone understand. Ethan nodded. That sounds peaceful. It is. She looked around the garage. I told the board that I will not hide my personal life to make other people comfortable. Ethan studied her face. And what did they say? Some disagreed. And the rest? They listened. Claire reached for his hand. I realized something. What? I spent years thinking strength meant controlling everything. But sometimes strength means standing quietly beside the person you care about and refusing to be ashamed of it. Ethan smiled. That sounds like something I would say. You have been a bad influence. He laughed. Lily appeared from the office carrying her school notebook. Are you two talking about me? Claire smiled. Always. Lily looked at Ethan, then at Claire. Are you staying for dinner? Claire looked at Ethan. He nodded. If she will have me. Lily grinned. I already told you. You are my friend. That evening, the three of them sat around the small kitchen table in Ethan's home. Nothing about it looked extraordinary. There were no cameras, no expensive decorations, no business headlines. Just warm food, quiet laughter, and a little girl explaining her school project while two adults listened. Months later, Claire would still lead Whitmore Technologies. Ethan would still run his garage. Their lives would not become perfect. They would simply become shared. One Saturday morning, Ethan stood outside the garage while Claire arrived with coffee. He smiled. "You are early." She handed him a cup. "I wanted to see the lucky man." Ethan laughed. "Still me." Claire smiled and took his hand. "Still you." He looked at her, then toward Lily, who was waving from inside the garage. For once, Ethan did not wonder whether he belonged in Claire's world. He understood that they had built a world of their own. And perhaps that was the quietest miracle of all. Money had brought Claire everything except peace. Ethan had lost almost everything except his dignity. Somehow, they found in each other what neither wealth nor struggle could provide alone: trust, grace, respect, and a second chance. The room was never silent because someone had won. It became silent because everyone finally understood that the greatest kind of love does not ask what you own. It asks who you are when there is nothing left to prove.